Welcome to the Unplayable Podcast, coming to you live from Trivandrum in southern India, where Australia have just made the announcement on their ODI World Cup squad. Well, actually it was yesterday, but today we spoke to the Chief of Selectors, Mr. George Bailey, to run through the selections and the one change that they made from the provisional squad. So we're going to get into that today and discuss just where Australia's chances lie with the current 15 that they've chosen. My name is Josh Schonafinger, joined by Jack Paynter. We're currently in our hotel room because it is bucketing outside, and it has been since we got here. But doesn't really affect anything, does it? Because the matches are still a couple of days away.
Yeah, so we've got the one warm-up match against the Dutch tomorrow. It doesn't look promising. Rain still forecast for tomorrow. And it's also put a dent in the boys' golf plans. So no doubt they would have planned for a golf day today, but the weather has curtailed that. So the simulator it is.
Yeah, I think inside activities today. But let's jump into that squad because, as we know, they announced a provisional squad. What was that, maybe a month ago or so?
Yeah, start of September, I think it was. And only one change to that. Marnus Labuschagne coming in, Ashton Agar out, and Travis Head. The big news is they've decided to carry him through the first half of the tournament until hopefully he comes online and can play the second half as Australia push towards the finals.
Yeah, I noticed George was saying until Head comes online a lot today. Is that the new phrase for joining the squad, is it?
Sounds like it. It slipped into me as well. So thanks, George.
So let's have a look at the squad just for a refresher for those who maybe aren't quite up to date. The batters are David Warner, Mitchell Marsh, Marnus Labuschagne, Steve Smith, Travis Head. The keepers, Alex Carey and Josh Inglis. The all-rounders, well, Marsh is, of course, an all-rounder. Marcus Stoinis, Glenn Maxwell and Cameron Green. So plenty of all-round options there if they do want to change up their structure, which we'll get to in a bit. The spinner is Adam Zampa. He's going to go it alone with no Ashton Agar there next to him. And the quicks, of course, the big three, Cummins, Stark and Hazelwood, they'll be supported by Sean Abbott if required. We've also got a couple of reserves in Matt Short and Tanveer Sangha who are sticking with the squad for now. Not quite sure if they're going to see out the whole tournament as travelling reserves, but for now they're going to hang around.
I think it's a bit of a play-it-by-ear situation with those guys. They'll have a look at the warm-up matches, see how they go, and then potentially they could stay around for a bit longer. They're both sort of like for likes, I guess. You know, Matt Short for Maxwell and Travis Head, and then Tanveer Sangha obviously for Adam Zampa. So they've got some options there should they need to call on some reinforcements for the bowling department.
Well, let's talk about Travis Head because that's the big one. He's got that fractured hand at the minute. He's currently in Australia recuperating and recovering, and they obviously rate him so highly that they're prepared to go with a 14-player squad effectively for the first half of the tournament, maybe more. We don't really have a time frame on him just yet. Why don't we hear what George Bailey said about the decision to carry Travis Head into the squad?
First and foremost about him just recovering, and that's the hurdle that he's got to overcome. He's got a broken bone, so yeah, there's not a specific date in terms of a game that we've sort of lined up, and I guess we were aware of the risk that if there is a setback there at some point, then it makes it really challenging for Trav. But he's a really important player for us. He's certainly a player who's in our first choice 11, and hopefully when he does come online, whenever that is, and he's available, he can have a really important impact for us towards the back end of the tournament.
As you can hear it from George, it's a bit of a risk taking him in to the early stage of the tournament when he's not going to play, but he has been the standout player in this format for Australia and across all formats really for the past 9 to 12 months. So he's definitely a match winner that can play a role at the back end of the tournament. And who knows? We did ask George if he could bat at 3 if Marsh is going quite well at the top of the order with David Warner. He didn't really be drawn on that, but they've got plenty of options at the top of the order, and that's what Head provides when he does come back in.
Yeah, well, Head missed selection for the 2019 World Cup, and since that tournament, he's actually been Australia's most consistent one-day batter, highest average of the Aussie batters with an average of 60.8 in the format and a strike rate of 119.8. That's across 16 matches with 7 50-plus scores. So he's in the form of his life, and you can understand why a player of his ability and someone who can change the game as quickly as he can, you can understand why they want to keep him.
Exactly. And the other factor, that worked against Ashton Agar is that he's only played 4 matches in total since the end of the Big Bash. So he hasn't played a lot of cricket. He's had a bit of a torrid time with injury, and he's missed the South Africa series. Well, he played one game and played a crucial role, but then got a calf injury and had to go home. And then waiting the birth of his first child. So George Bailey just said they couldn't afford to carry 2 injured players in their squad of 15, and they thought that Travis Head was going to play a bigger role in their title hopes.
Yeah, so I wonder if Agar's calf was fully fit and ready to go, if he would have kept his spot on the side, but it's just one of those hypotheticals I guess we won't know at this stage. It means Australia are going to commit to the one spinner policy, which they had success with in the 2021 T20 World Cup, of course. All the teams in the UAE that year went with a couple of spinners. Australia didn't. They went with Adam Zampa, backed up by Glenn Maxwell. And George Bailey believes Glenn Maxwell is more than an all-rounder, doesn't he?
He does. He was pretty quick to shut down the one specialist spinner angle.
Well, I think the starting point of that is I'm not sure. I think it's unfair on Maxi to say that he's not a specialist spinner. I think his white ball T20 and one-day spinning record is pretty handy, and I think you could very much consider him a frontline option. So we certainly consider it that we've got 2 frontline spinners within our first choice 11.
Maxwell, coming off a career best of 4 for 40, definitely show that he's capable of bowling 10 overs. It's just that he's also coming off a bit of an injury, had a bit of a flare-up of that left ankle that he broke last year. So whether he can sustain 10 overs for the entire tournament, it's a long tournament, 9 games across 45 days. So we did ask George Bailey what sort of his thoughts were around another spin option should Maxwell have to rest or Zampa have to rest, or if they needed more than 20 spin overs. And he said they have a few options, I guess, but they're sticking true to that approach of playing the quicks and Zampa as the spinner.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. Obviously, we know the quality of those 3 big quicks, but there's no other at the minute. I mean, there's plenty of all-rounders in this squad. I'm looking at Stoinis, I'm looking at Marsh, I'm looking at Green, and Marsh says he will return to bowling when the World Cup comes around. But then Maxwell's sort of the only all-rounder who bowls spin at the minute. Obviously, Smith and Labuschagne have bowled plenty of spin in the past, but in this format of the game, it's probably unlikely that we're going to see them bowl at all. Warner, of course, at the top, he won't bowl either. So as far as other spin options in the 11, it's pretty few and far between.
Yeah, I think they'd have to be pretty desperate to bowl Smith and Marnus during the tournament. I know they have bowled a lot in international cricket, but they haven't bowled a lot recently. So they're, short boundaries. They're a bit, out of touch with their bowling. So, that could provide a scoring opportunity for the opposition. So I think that's unlikely at this stage. But in saying that, we've put up a stats piece on all the venues that Australia will play at on the cricket.com.au website and the CA Live app. And you'll notice that pace bowlers have taken more wickets at every one of the venues that, barring one, that Australia is going to play at, which is Lucknow, and they've taken 26 wickets apiece. And that's a fairly new venue as well. Australia's never played there. So, perhaps stacking your attack with quicks in ODI cricket is the way to go, because especially even in India as well, because, predominantly, pace bowlers have more spots than the 11. It's not necessarily the case here, but they're still taking more wickets.
And I guess as far as other options for Australia go in the spin department, there's not a whole lot of players with international experience to come in now that Lyon is injured, Agar's injured. You've got Matt Kuhneman, who played a few ODIs in Sri Lanka last year. Swepson's played a bit, but is a bit out of favour at the minute. Todd Murphy obviously played in India, but doesn't have a lot of List A cricket under his belt. So maybe they're thinking, well, we can get a better result out of an experienced quick than an inexperienced spinner.
There's sort of in a phase now where there's a big divide between the players in the squad and who have played a lot for Australia and the players who are new and coming into the squad, your likes of Sanger, Hardy, Matt Short. Those guys haven't played a lot of international cricket, and I guess that over the last sort of month they've tried to expose them, but they're still very raw and inexperienced at international level. So yeah, it would be a risk bringing one of those spinners in. But Sanger's bowled quite nicely the other night in the 3rd ODI when he got his chance with Zampa rested. Had a taste of it in South Africa, and we know what he can do in the Big Bash. He's been doing that since he was 18 years old. So it's just a matter of if he's ready for the cauldron of a World Cup in India.
Of course, Ben Menente's doing good things back home as well. He's one of our favourites on the Unplayable podcast. Marnus Labuschagne, he's the one that comes in. I remember when the initial provisional squad was named and Marnus wasn't in there, and he put up a post a few days later on Instagram saying that he's working on his one-day game, and there was a bit of footage from him in the nets. And I remember seeing the comments saying that A lot of people were getting stuck into him. Oh, mate, you're not in the World Cup squad. Why are you bothering? All this sort of thing. But he went to South Africa. Credit to him. He wasn't even picked in that first one day, but he got a crack as the concussion substitute. A bit of deja vu for him there. And then 100 the next game. And he's batted well in this series too, getting a good score in that third match in Rajkot. So it's well deserved for Marnus. He's certainly changed, and he's got some impressive numbers that you've dug out, Jack.
Yeah, he's proved those guys on Instagram wrong, hasn't he? When he got his chance with Steve Smith missing that series with his injury. But prior to South Africa in ODI cricket, his career strike rate was 74.9. In the 8 games since, he's been striking at 97.7, and the other night I think he was at over 120 in the third ODI as he sort of anchored Australia's middle order to allow them to post 350 plus. In that innings, he only faced 16 dot balls of his 58 that he faced for his 72 runs, and only hit 9 boundaries. So that's not a lot of boundaries, but he was able to find the gaps, work the ones and the twos in the impressive heat as well, and turn the strike over. So I think that's a real plus, and he's really improved his one-day batting as he said he was going to. If you look at the dot ball percentage of Australia's batters, only Travis Head has a fewer dot balls faced in his innings, and that's 45.5%, and Labuschagne's 45.7%. And so that's in the last couple of series. So that's a big plus for Australia, and he's been the top run scorer in ODIs for 2023 for Australia, just off the back of what he's done in the last 8 games.
Yeah, and that's his role, isn't it? He's got to be the one who ticks the strike over in those middle overs, because there's so much power at the end of the innings and also at the top of the innings, I guess, with Marsh and Warner. It's not his role to hit boundaries every ball. It's his role to get those singles and make sure the dot balls are as few as possible. And
make sure that Australia bat deep as well, and those power hitters can come in at the end, because we've seen 6 times since the last World Cup, Australia's been bowled out prior to the 40th over, and 3 of those have come in the last eight games. So that's the most of any team since the last World Cup who's going to be at this World Cup. And it's been a big problem of late. So if Labuschagne can, string that middle order momentum together and get Australia going deep, then that allows those hitters to come in towards the back end, and Australia can push the total up, 350, possibly 400 on these smaller grounds in India.
George Bailey was asked about the challenge that was set to Marnus Labuschagne about earning his spot in the side, and here's what he had to say.
I've loved the way he's grabbed the opportunity as he's come back into the team through South Africa and through this series in India. I've loved the intent and the way he's gone about particularly starting his innings, and his ability to sort of maintain the momentum of the starts that the top order have been getting. So that's really important. I thought the way he spoke about his omission earlier was spot on, and wholeheartedly agree. I don't think we've ever doubted that he doesn't have the ability to play a really important role through that middle order. We just hadn't seen it, but since he's come back in, he's been fantastic. Provided some really good impetus in the field as well. So it's been really pleasing.
Yeah, so it's quite a comeback for Labuschagne. It's looking like he might be the starting number 4 in this side now after being out of the squad completely. So credit to him. Just a bit further up that order, it's been Warner and Marsh who have been dominating so far in this series. Travis Head, who isn't here yet, he will obviously join the squad where he can, but if he can't, if he has a setback in that injury, we've got an update on what could happen with his position.
Yeah, so George Bailey said that they can replace him if he doesn't regain fitness. They just have to get ICC approval. So, they can potentially bring another player in for him later down the track. But Marsh has been going quite well at the top of the order. It's his best position so far in ODI cricket. You've got some stats around that, don't you?
Yeah, he averages 73 when he opens the batting in ODI cricket, which is a pretty good rate for someone who hasn't done a lot of it in the past. So if that continues throughout the whole World Cup, he might end as the leading run scorer.
And Warner as well, he's really come into his own these last 2 series in India and South Africa. That's his highest striking series since the last World Cup. So 127.8 against India recently, 121.2. The problem just being he gets out once he reaches 50. So if he can put, a big score on the board, he could go really deep and really set Australia's innings up, because he's been striking, hitting boundaries freely. He's been looking really good. He's just tries a little bit too much after he passes 50.
Yeah, so Warner scores this series of 52, 53 and 56. Jack, as a neutral observer, would you rather your opener get a 50 every match but not go on, or get 100, let's say every fourth or fifth match and get nothing in the other innings?
I think I'd take the 50 every
Would you?
match,
Yeah.
because he's setting up the innings. And as we saw the other night, Marsh kicked on and got to 96. Smith came in, hit 74, I think it was. Marnus after that, 72. So all the top four all made 50s. Obviously, you'd love someone to go on and get a really big 100 and, really take that score up towards, 350, 400. But I think if he can set the platform of 50 off 30, 40 balls, then that's a tick for Australia.
Yeah, Warner's form has been pretty good, so that's a great sign for Australia. Why don't we just have a quick look at the keepers? Australia have decided to keep Josh Inglis in the squad as the backup keeper to Alex Carey, of course, who had that fantastic 2019 World Cup and saved Australia's bacon on a couple of occasions. And it's been Alex Carey who has been the number 5 in this position as well. And it looks like that's where he'll start in this tournament. He hasn't scored many runs, particularly in India, but he had a good South African tour.
Yeah, he got a 99 there towards the end of the series, found some form. He's another key in the middle order, isn't he? Doesn't strike as, doesn't hit the ball as big as, some of the hitters coming in. But, like Labuschagne, he can maneuver the balls into the gaps, run hard, earn his runs that way, and then take the innings deep, and then eventually those hitters will come in after that and boost that total. Inglis
is a good one to have as a reserve because he can bat anywhere in the order. He's been very versatile. We did some numbers and his best position wasn't, ironically, number 5 as well. So perfect like for like there. And if somebody, one of the other batters gets injured, well, he can slot in as a specialist bat as well.
And another reserve after that has played a fair bit of late, actually, Sean Abbott. He'll be the 4th quick behind the big 3, Cummins, Stark and Hazelwood, who, ironically, the other night was the first time they'd played together in ODI since the 29th of November 2020, also against India, but that one was at the SCG. So good signs there for Australia heading into the World Cup. Sean Abbott does provide a bit with his batting as well, as we saw the other night, a couple of big hits at indoor in his 50 towards the end of the innings. Unfortunately, it was in a losing cause. So plenty of options in the pace bowling stocks for Australia heading into the World Cup.
That's right. And that World Cup begins on October 8. It's Australia against India in Chennai. The rumours are that India might play 3 spinners. Australia are going to go with Zampa and Maxwell, we know. So it's going to be a fascinating contest of the contrasting styles there when we get to it. Australia do also have that scheduled warm-up match which Jack mentioned. One against the Netherlands tomorrow here in Trivandrum, and one against Pakistan in Hyderabad a couple of days later. So do keep an eye on cricket.com.au and the CA Live app for updates and scores, pictures and videos from all those matches to see who's putting their name forward for that first team of the World Cup. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the Unplayable Podcast. We're going to be bringing you recaps of every World Cup match throughout the tournament that Australia play. So if you can't stay up during those late night finishes, we'll keep you fully abreast of everything that's happened over here in India. So thank you for joining us again on this episode of the Unplayable Podcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.